So on with the next physical science. We talked about physics just enough to be dangerous. Now we're going to talk about chemistry, some things about chemistry, again, just enough to be dangerous. It's said that actually chemistry is based upon physics. So one of the things you've probably run into before, you know a lot of things already about chemistry. For instance, we're going to talk about this kind of basic unit that we call an atom. But before we talk about that, we know that actually matter, which is made up of atoms, matter needs to have some sort of mass and occupy space. You may have run into that definition before. And I do want to look closely at a little bit more what an atom is. So matter is made up of atoms, and the concept of an atom started way back with Democritus, maybe even before that, but in 470 to 380 BC. And he said that what we see as a piece of wood, or what we see as a piece of anything, that matter is made up of tiny little pieces called atoms. And that is so cool. So what then, as our concept of an atom evolved, we said, well, atoms basically are indestructible. They remain intact. And we know, and we'll be talking a little bit about this when we talk about chemistry, that actually atoms can be bonded together and create what we call compounds. So I know that was a lot to throw at you, but I've got this little kind of flow chart over here where all matter is anything that is made up of atoms, and all things are made up of atoms. So matter has mass and occupies space. And then matter can either be a pure substance or it can be a mixture. Okay? And if it's a pure substance, if I point to a chunk of matter and say, well, that's a pure substance, well, then either all of the atoms are the same, and we call that pile of matter an element, or, and you're probably very familiar with this concept of a compound. For instance, water. You guys would probably tell me the formula for water is H2O. What does that mean? It means that there are 2 hydrogens and 1 oxygen in that repeating unit of a water molecule. Okay, that is an example of what we call a compound. Okay, it's got a set number of atoms in that repeating unit. So just before I leave this slide, while I'm here, the matter, if it's not pure, it's what we call a mixture. That's a very common term. What's a mixture? It means it's got 2 or more things that are thrown together. And I say thrown together because mixtures actually are, you can separate the things back out. So for instance, if I had a beaker and I put in sand and I put in carbon pieces, okay, they're both solids, and I could actually see kind of the brown sand and the black carbon. I could pick them back out. Now, if that mixture is actually the same throughout, if I like stirred this real good, so that, it might be kind of hard to do, so that everywhere I went I got the same proportion of carbon to sand, then that's what we call a homogeneous mixture. If it's chunky, which is probably more likely the case in the example I gave, if it's not uniform, we call it a heterogeneous mixture.